the heart of this conference is, it's literally to set the framework for this question beyond the unknown. So this is a talk or a discussion with three extraordinary speakers on the talk, a talk on the unknown of entrepreneurship support. Yeah, we know, all of us know why supporting entrepreneurs is important. I believe they are the lifeblood, certainly of the African continent, but also the Indian subcontinent and UK and Europe, UK, which is where I live and work. That entrepreneurs are absolutely, we know why we're supporting them and what is their role in driving economies and innovation around the world. We also know many of the common challenges faced by entrepreneurs the world over, and they are common challenges. The first one that comes to the list, top of the list, is always finance. I believe that yes, finance is, it's not so much finance, but as Fernandez said, as Graham said, is financial services and non-financial services, and the bringing of the two together. So we know many of the challenges, but actually there's a lot that we don't know. And this is what our three speakers are going to share from their own perspectives and experience on what remains to be understood in the way we, funders, entrepreneurship support organizations, could do better, could better support entrepreneurs in the global South through training, mentorship, networks, investments, access to markets, and the list goes on. The panel is going to be structured in two parts. Part one, we will hear from the three dynamic speakers and their perspectives on entrepreneurship development. Part two, after the coffee break, speakers will respond to your questions from the audience, from the participant. So again, a reminder to all of you to please listen and to share your comments and also ask your questions in the chat, which the organizers will assemble and we can present to the three speakers after our coffee break. I guess I can now move to really introducing three amazing speakers who have joined BTK 2021 to share their experiences and perspectives. David McKenzie is a lead economist at the World's Development Research Group, Finance and Private Sector Development Unit. World Bank was a great supporter of entrepreneurship. Certainly my engagement with them was through my work across the African continent in supporting entrepreneurs. David has worked with governments and NGOs worldwide to test and improve different forms of entrepreneurship support programs. Evaluation of enterprise development program is his area of expertise, and it will be fantastic to hear from him what works and what is not working. Our second speaker is Bagoré Bathily, who's a renowned Senegalese social entrepreneur and owner of, and I'm going to now attempt to pronounce this in French, Laiterie de Berger. His company links traditional milk producers with cities' growing demand for dairy products. Living across the African continent, I could not understand why was Africa drinking powdered milk when it has 60% of the world's arable land, and and dairy and cows, and just like why. And it would be fantastic to hear from Bagoré as to how he has developed a whole business model around milk production. Bagoré is an advocate for social entrepreneurship as a new efficient tool to face Africa's social and economic development challenges in a sustainable way. He has dedicated well over 15 years of his life to identifying, growing, and developing entrepreneurs in Senegal. I'd like to introduce Irene Ochem, who is our third speaker. Irene is the CEO of Africa Women Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, AWIEF. AWIEF is a Pan-African and non-profit organization dedicated to fostering women's economic inclusion and empowerment and closing the gender gaps in African entrepreneurship through entrepreneurship support and development. Irene is an entrepreneurship, trade, and innovation specialist focused on gendered economic equity and social inclusion. It gives me great pleasure to welcome David, Bagoré, and Irene to the conference and to share with us their experiences. Hello.
Hi.
There you are, David.
Yeah, no, I guess we're waiting for you to just tell us to go. So I'm happy to.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
happy to start if you would like me to.
Yes,
start
please. Thank you. And David, I mean, looks like very nice and bright out there, but actually, it's like, what time is it in the morning there?
Yeah, it's four something in the morning. So
Okay.
this is such an exciting topic that it's everyone's willing to get up early for it.
It's worth waking up, huh?
Yeah. So Elisa, exactly. So you seeing the messages here from Elisa?
David, Pamela, can you ask the question to speakers? Yes. Yeah. So David, let me start with you. Development partners, governments, private sector companies, and foundations have been supporting entrepreneurship well over 3 or 4 decades now. But what have we learned from that engagement? What is working and what does not work? And I know, David, that you have you're going to share some slides, so the floor is yours. So what have we learned from that engagement? What is working and what is not?
Thanks. So yes, as as we've been hearing, it's incredibly popular to try and help entrepreneurs. We've been trying to help them for a long time. There's one of the sort of most common and popular ways of trying to help entrepreneurs is through various types of capacity training, through business training, where we gather together potential entrepreneurs and current entrepreneurs and put them often in classroom settings and try and teach them a whole bunch of skills that we think are going to be helpful. And one of the really tricky things is trying to figure out whether this works, because entrepreneurs are, by their nature, quite innovative. The types of people that come forward and try and improve themselves are real go-getters often, who might be able to succeed anyway. And we don't know often whether, it's that we attract the types of people who are going to succeed to our different programs, or whether our programs are the ones that are helping people to succeed. And so this has been one of the challenges, that there's been a lot of effort and money spent on trying to do capacity building. But until relatively recently, we haven't had a lot of evidence as to whether this type of program works or not. And moreover, there's just so many other things that are going on in the lives of entrepreneurs and their businesses that it's very hard just to look before and after and say, okay, they were earning this much sales beforehand, they're earning, a bit more sales afterwards. The difference is due to training. There could be so many other things that are driving the differences. And so one of the things that we have done as researchers systematically over the last decade or so is to set up large-scale experiments where we test systematically whether this type of training works. We've taken one group of individuals and we've put them through the training program, and we've compared them to very similar individuals who were randomly chosen not to get the program straight away. And then we can see whether this effort and money has been useful or not. And so, this is a mess, this chart, but what I want to tell you about is just, a couple of things from this whole effort of doing this. So the first thing is that, this has been going on for a while. That you can see here. The second column here has the year that people started doing these studies, and you can see sort of the first ones of these studies were in the first part of the 2000s. And let's just look at the first line here. What I would like to say is, when each of these lines here with the little square represents what was found in terms of the impact on business profits from one of these studies. And this negative 15% is actually what is in this very first study. So this is kind of bad news, right? That we put people through training and it actually seems to have reduced profits by 15%. But then you can see there's also an interval around this. There's minus 40% to plus 9%. And so this is the challenge, that each time we do one of these studies, we find an estimate. We also find, there's a range in that estimate because, there's a whole bunch of different entrepreneurs where it's very hard to measure accurately the impact of this training. And so what we've done recently is aggregate up a whole set of this literature. And really the only takeaway that you want to take from this whole messy chart is the number at the bottom here, which is this 12 that's highlighted. Okay, and this says if we take the totality of these studies, if we take all these studies and we look, and some of them have been more recent, some of them have been a little bit in the past. These are all studies of business training approaches where we're trying to teach marketing, financing skills, planning, budgeting to entrepreneurs. What has happened? Well, what's happened is that typically somebody who's going through one of these training programs on average gets about a 10, 12% increase in their business profits. So this is not nothing. This is great. We're getting some impact on profits, but it's not transformational either. We're sort of taking people, who are earning $100 in profits a month, and now they're getting $112 in profits a month. This is great, but this types of training programs are often quite expensive. They typically might cost sort of $200 or more per person to train, and so this could be worth it. They could earn back the cost of that training over a couple of years, but it's the question is, how can we do better? And this is in terms of profits. I'm just going to show you one other horrible number. And this one is even worse because this is the impact of all those programs on employment generation. So if we think about all these different types of business training to small enterprises, when we put the typical small enterprise through one of these business training, it creates 0 jobs, a very precise 0 here. So we have all these studies here that have gone through and said, how much do we get on average for jobs out of trying to train entrepreneurs? And if we take somebody who's, a pretty small scale business with sort of, 1 to 10 employees, we put them through business training, their profits go up a little bit. It's not nearly enough to support a whole nother worker, and we don't get any jobs out of it. So, the question is, can we do better? And so, this has been the other set of research over the last few years is are there alternatives to this traditional type of training? Are there things that we can do to overcome other constraints? And so one of the reasons that training might not work as well is because the lack of sort of business or marketing skills might not be the only constraint that's holding business owners back. There might be other things going on. And so in particular, one thing that we've learned in a number of studies is that there's other constraints that are facing women apart from the fact that they don't know how to do marketing and accounting, for example. And so one avenue for sort of where we're in this sort of known unknown world is we know we need to do better. We're not completely sure how to do this as well as we can, is helping sort of orient this training more to some of the particular constraints that women face. And so I've worked with the ILO in Kenya, for example, on a program called Get Ahead, which looks at really both trying to teach these business and marketing skills, but also at trying to overcome some of these gender constraints, sort of teaching women how to enter different sectors. The fact that maybe the reason why a lot of women aren't growing so well is just because they're in sectors where there's not a lot of scope for growth. teaching them how to separate better their household and business tasks and bargain together and work together with other women. So you can see this little picture here is one of the exercises where, the idea is to teach each woman is connected to each other. We can form this network and we can sort of learn together and overcome stereotypes. And so, when we tested this in, over 3,000 businesses in Kenya, what we found was that not only did it help these women increase their business profits, and this sort of lasted for over 4 years, but that it actually grew the market as a whole. That when we looked in the villages, in the marketplaces where we had done this training, it wasn't that they were just stealing business and customers from the businesses next door that weren't going through training. The market as a whole grew. And now it still was sort of relatively modest. We've seen these 15% improvements in profit. That's great. It's not sort of transformational, but at least it's sort of doing something for that whole ecosystem and not just for the particular women who are helped. The second thing, and this is what sort of one of my favorite areas, is to think about, what distinguishes a successful business from a less successful business. And it's not just these hard skills in terms of marketing and accounting, but it's also this mindset, this sort of viewpoint of how can I be innovative and do something so that tomorrow looks different from today. And so we worked in Togo with some psychologists to test a program called personal initiative training. And one of my favorite exercises here is something where you go through and say, okay, what did today look like? Maybe I opened my store, I waited for my customers to come, my supplier didn't come as well as I thought, a customer came, I didn't have what they wanted, I served some customers, I closed, and then, I looked at my sales and it wasn't really that great a day. Okay, let's go through step by step and say, what could I have done today or what could I do today so that tomorrow looks different, so that I don't just repeat the same day? Can I think about different products that I can be selling? Can I think about plan Bs if something doesn't work out? Can I be resilient? How can I have that mindset of being proactive, of constantly looking for new opportunities? And we're going to hear from Bagoré about, how he did this, I think. And, this is the importance of soft skills as well as hard skills in training. And so I think this is one of the areas where, we know we need to do more, and we're testing some different approaches there. I think the sort of biggest unknown at the moment is how do we do all this in a world where we're increasingly trying to do things online and reach thousands and millions of people rather than small handfuls. A lot of these training programs that I told you about are working with sort of 20, 30 entrepreneurs at a time. But the scale of the challenge we face is that there's millions of entrepreneurs that we'd like to be helping. And so, the pandemic has given us an additional push to try out different approaches here. And it's not clear exactly what's the right methodology, what's the right mode where we can take this to scale and effectively reach millions of entrepreneurs. So I've been trying this in a couple of cases here. This is the one on the left gives you sort of one approach, which is an approach like we're doing now, sort of Zoom seminars. This is training in Mexico. You can see here, what's your wow factor? What differentiates your business and how can you improve? This sort of personal initiative training getting taught, but it's getting taught by Zoom, by a live instructor, to small groups who can interact. You can see there's a chat window. The business owners are trying to chat, work with one another and share experiences in a chat window. You're working with sort of groups of 20 entrepreneurs at a time. We've reached 2,000 entrepreneurs, but you're doing that through 100 training sessions. It's sort of got some ability to reach out. We're working not just in Mexico, but in Guatemala and in different cities in Mexico. It's a way to sort of extend geographically, but it's still relatively 20 at a time. And so the alternative is, can you just make this completely self-contained and interactive through computerized lessons? And so the picture on the right shows something that we've been trying in Ecuador, where we've been working with a program where it tries to teach this personal initiative training, but through interactive, self-paced exercises with feedback from the computer. And once you get this set up, of course, it's very easy to extend it to thousands of people. So 50,000 people have now gone through this program in Ecuador. Now, it's unknown whether either of these still work. We've got ongoing studies that are trying these approaches, and whether you can really get that human touch that we get from our in-person networking sharing of experiences together over the computer. But this is, one of the big unknowns is how do we scale anything that's successful so that we're not just helping tens or hundreds of people, but we can help millions of people. And so I think, one of the...
David, we have a couple of minutes, yeah?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
So I think, one of the approaches that we think may be needed is something where it's not one size fits all, but maybe a funnel and filter approach where we start with something like this online training, provide mass training to lots of people, follow up with some of the most successful people where we, have some 1-hour visits in person or some sort of, short visits. And then we go through potentially to more intensive group sessions, and then finally to intensive help. So the point being that not every entrepreneur is going to need our full suite of capacity building services. And, one of the big questions is how can we identify what types of training we should give to who? So here's my sort of final set of unknowns here. The first unknown is a scaling thing. Anything that we find that works, that's great, but how do we make that work for the millions of entrepreneurs in the developing world who really we would like to help them improve? The second thing is moving beyond this question of does training work to how do we target training and how do we figure out what types of training work best for which types of firms. We've talked a little bit about gender-oriented training. We've talked a little bit about sort of this personal initiative type of training, but there's a whole range of entrepreneurs facing different challenges, and we need to figure out how can we best target the right type of training to the right type of entrepreneur. And then the final thing is really that we still lack long-term evidence. A lot of what I've shown you has been looking at impacts over 1, 2, 3 years, but we don't know 10 years down the line, has any of this really had any lasting impact? We know a lot of businesses die in the first 5 or 6 years. Half of all businesses have died in that period. So if we, are all we doing just sort of helping people figure out how short amount of time, or does this really lead to transformation? And then the final thing is really that these are my unknowns that I hope evidence will join me in trying to find in the future. So let me stop my sharing, and thanks very much.
David, thank you. Just being mindful of time, you've raised a lot of, you pressed a lot of buttons inside of me anyway, as someone who designed a program to train 1,000 entrepreneurs every year and saw, those who became high flyers, those who just sustained themselves, and those who failed. I'd love to continue this discussion, but I think in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to so thank you very much for raising questions and not having nicely neat answers to them. I think the fundamental question is, for me, it's really the fire in your belly. And that's what's going to bring me that no amount of training without that fire in the belly of the entrepreneur to want to the fire in the belly to really make, to develop the idea, their vision, mission, a business idea. Without that sustaining them, no amount of training is going to help, except that it will give them certain tools, which brings me to Bagoré. Bagoré, David's shared, extraordinary evidence of training, its success and failures, 0 employment, 12% possibly profits, from the perspective of, of developing, I guess, entrepreneur support organization. You're an entrepreneur yourself and an amazingly successful one. Can you tell us which factors helped you succeed as an entrepreneur? And which of those are you replicating now to help others through your own organization? Welcome, Bagoré.
Thank you.
There you are. Lovely to see you. You're in Senegal?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, fantastic. I love your videos, by the way. Everybody, participants, go watch his videos. And there's a film I must tell you about, which was made by Sean Benegal about cooperative farmers. But first, let's stick on to this conference. And really, yeah, what factors helped you succeed as an entrepreneur, and how are you replicating this? And and how do you answer a lot of pretty depressing news from David around training? Okay. floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Parminder. And thank you, David. Huh? It's tough to accompany entrepreneurs. Huh? So yeah, definitely it is. And you know what I want to share with you. Maybe I share my screen also to have some pictures. Yeah, good. I think you can see now the screen. Can you? Okay. So yes, this is.
Yes, we can see, but you might want to put it on full screen. Yeah, now it's on full screen. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, this is a picture of illustrating, you know, the value chain we operate in. So, you know, at the left you have the cows and the traditional family. Maybe you can see a veterinarian. I am a veterinarian, in fact. So okay, this is all about animal, breeding. Breeding. Then you have the animal feed, and maybe you can see some cans. It's symbolizing the milk collection. Then you have this, inox factory symbol. So transformation. Then you have the final product, the distribution. If you go to the right, and you see the final consumers. This middle class, let's say, urban Senegalese. That is the main target for us. Okay. So how can you build this? How can you build a value chain? Taking the opportunity of this growing middle class, which is a real market, very dynamic and very specific, our market. How can you take the opportunity of this market, to give value to the upstream, including very small herders, that are not efficient suppliers, in fact. So this is an entrepreneurial adventure, and what I see, I will share with you today is, I think in every entrepreneurial trajectory, we can see 5 very important steps. Okay, so I will share this with you, but remember, it is, for my example in Senegal, I will take the example of my own company. The reason why we were set up was, I'm a veterinarian. I couldn't understand why in Senegal, while 30% of the population is living from herding, pastoralists. They are pastoralists. We have many cows. 30% of the population is living with cows, and we purchase the milk that we import. If you look at the supply of our markets, the transformation in Senegal, it is mainly based on imported milk. So this was a crazy paradox. Okay, so but there was this status quo, and it was like the normal. The normal is, yeah, we have a lot of herders, but we import powder. So my first move into the entrepreneurial adventure was to reject this status quo, And in every entrepreneurial trajectory, we can see this first step. Okay, things are being done this way. It is the status quo, but I don't accept it. I think we should make it differently. Maybe you can find it in many other cases. I have a friend. Or let's take even Facebook. How do people network? I think they could network with connecting with new technologies. We can make this way of connecting people. So they always propose something different by rejecting the status quo. So the second step we see in every entrepreneurial trajectory is a vision, because we can have this group of students talking tonight and saying, yeah, I don't like this, or I don't like that, but they don't give any solution, any potential solution. The vision is the potential solution. So in my case, it was, okay, we have herders in Senegal. I think we should organize a milk collection system using this or this tool, and we can make, this kind of brand different. That will be different because it has this particular origin. So it was not very clear, but it was a vision. Okay, it was the second step, let's say, into the entrepreneurial trajectory or journey. It's not enough. You have to be able, if you're an entrepreneur, to reject the status quo, to have a vision, about how to make the difference. But you have to go further, to have what some people call the conviction. Conviction. You have to know and to work to make your vision more feasible. You have to bring it back to reality. Okay, what are the constraints of the reality I have to understand and to adapt myself to, in order that my vision can be executed. For example,
I just want to interrupt just for 2 seconds. You have several slides.
Yeah.
Are you using them, or you're not, or you're staying with this slide?
I will flow quickly because 7 minutes is short, so I will flow quickly through the other slides.
Okay, fine. But they were amazing slides of showing your growth. Okay.
Yeah. So let me just give an overview, then we'll go through the slides. So I was saying, you have this third step, which is what we can call the conviction. There you find the entrepreneurs, they generally make their business plans. Okay, for example, a business plan is a way you explain more with pragmatism. What is your vision? What is your business model? What is exactly your product? What will you need as financial solutions? How you will organize your business? Which kind of competence you need? Okay, so conviction, we call it like that because the first one who needs to be convicted is the entrepreneur. Many people, once again, have this kind of rejection of the status quo, have this kind of vision, but they don't get in the entrepreneurship because they prefer to stay in their jobs or to do like yesterday, because they are not convinced themselves of what this is something I have to do, and I can do it. I know it's feasible. And once they are convinced themselves, they can convince others. And business is all about that. You never make your business lonely. It's always, I need a partner. I need maybe some finance. I need some clients. I need some suppliers. You always make business with other people, and you need to convince them, that your idea is a good one, so that they can jump in it with you. Okay, and so this is the third step. The first step, not the last one. Again, it is execution. Once again, you have a lot of people, they have this rejection of status quo, they have a vision, they are convicted, okay? They can convince other people, but when it comes to deliver the product, it's not good, Or one day it is good, one other day it's not good, One day the quality is there, one day the quality is not there. So execution is about, dedicating to making the things right. Organization, how do I have a quality process, whatever it is, how do I get sure my product is always at the same level of appreciation by the consumer? How do I organize my work, my people, if I work with a team in an efficient way? David was talking about the daily routine, for example. It is a classical item about execution. How do I organize myself better and better every day? And you have people who are very good in execution. You have people who are not good in execution. I'll come to it after. But you always have this step of execution. Can you make your own, a little theoric vision and execution and preparation? Can you make it real, and consistent every day? And the last step, because it's not, we are at the fourth step. There is the last one, the fifth, that we find in every entrepreneurial trajectory. It is the perseverance, because it is never going as you expected. Sometimes we say 20% is going better than expected, but 80% of the time it is going slower than expected, or it needed more resource, or or more whatever. So you have to be perseverant to be optimistic and to be able to go for it time after time. All these steps, you find them when you have a successful entrepreneur. Whatever the business, you recognize it. If you take my example, I will share now the screens. This cow? She's drinking milk. Okay, so I'm a veterinarian. I was working in these areas, and I was facing this oftentimes. People try to milk their cows. They try to sell the milk, but there is nobody who wants to sell it, to purchase it, because the neighbors are herders, in fact, and the city is far away. When you go there, you find hundreds of herders. So you come back at home and you give the milk to the cows. So for me, it was the rejection of this status quo. This cannot go anymore. I have to change it. After, talking with the herders, I had the vision. Yeah, we can organize these people to make, our way of collecting milk with, tricycle, or, I benchmark with microfinance to know how you can downsize really this kind of services that people know, or people think is only dedicated to rich people for a bank, or, some people say in agro-industry, you can work with traditional suppliers, they are not efficient. Why that? I think I have a vision of a way to organize them, okay? Then conviction, I had to set up a dairy. I needed more than €1 million to start up this company. And I was a young vet at that time. I was something like 29, or never been doing any business in my life. So how could I be convinced? And how could I convince other financialists? You see here people from an investment fund or of Danone. Anyway, how could I, have a reliable business plan and business project? Okay, and execution. We are now one of the main brands in Senegal of dairy products. We did that because we were focused on quality. Is our product good every day? Of course, for a dairy business, it is one of our main focus is quality, of course. So execution at every step of the operation.
But we have 2 more minutes, yeah? Okay. I mean, I've gone over, but I wanted you to finish this, because this is your story.
Yeah. So I go straight. And then this is the last one. You have the perseverance, as I told you. This is very early morning. All these sellers going every day to make their stand-up meetings before they go and sell the product every day, 6 days per week. So, and it is every day, and that's also a reason why we are a successful business. And we are, despite people say, oh, what you do is not possible. You want to purchase milk from traditional herders. This is not possible. Everybody has tried. Nestle has tried. The Prime Minister has tried, and you are a veterinarian, you won't do it. And, this is not true. If you go, if you trust yourself and you make things properly, you will surprise, This is the destiny of entrepreneurs to make things that people think is not possible. So for me, to answer finally your question, Parminder, and to give also a response to David.
But can I make a suggestion? Because we really must, if we can hear Irene, and then let's take some of those questions. Because for me now, a question is, imagine you sitting in one of those training programs.
Yeah.
Would your spirit have been killed, or would you still have remained an inspirational entrepreneur? But if we can hold and then bring in Irene, and then maybe we can take all the questions as a panel together, if that's okay.
If I can just conclude one sentence. For me, at every step, we saw these 5 steps. For every step, we need specific training, specific accompanying. So for me, there is really a value in looking, when you talk to entrepreneurs, where are you? What do you need at the step where you are? Because if you give the tools for another step, it's not efficient.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much. Amazing. We should all buy Dolima milk from now on, the milk products. I'd love to, if I can, move to Irene Ochem. Irene, I hope you are there. Bagoré has talked about the main factors of success. Problem, he calls it rejecting the status quo. I also call it identifying the problem. Having a vision, conviction, execution, and the staying power, i.e. perseverance. And, yes, while there are common blueprints can be identified, but there's no one fits all solution, I guess, to entrepreneur support. The context, I know that when I arrived in Africa, I was clear that it wasn't about parachuting entrepreneurship programs from the West, but actually identifying and creating something from the ground up in the context of the African reality. Gender, education, and other aspects are key to designing support that ensures that entrepreneurs can really engage in the market and grow their businesses. Through the African Women Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, you've been supporting, Irene, you've been supporting women entrepreneurs in Africa. How is your enterprise development model different, I guess, or the same from that path taken by Bagoré and some of the failures of the entrepreneurship development programs shown to us by David? Irene, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good. Welcome. Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Paminda. It's quite a delight to be here at BTK 2021. Yes, of course, we've had David and Bagoré, and I'll be talking from the perspective of women entrepreneurs and specifically African women entrepreneurs. From the learnings that we have, what we have learned as how we've driving women entrepreneurship on the continent. We are all agreed through research, studies, surveys, and analysis that women lag behind men in terms of economic opportunities and economic power in all regions of the world and in all meaningful industries, and when measured in all socioeconomic levels. Is entrepreneurship support in Africa inclusive in terms of gender? If we describe inclusivity as the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, then I must tell you that Africa still falls short of an inclusive entrepreneurship ecosystem with regards to women. Although a lot has been achieved in recent years, and this holds much hope for the future, in Africa, the barriers for women's economic empowerment and female entrepreneurship are many and diverse. We still fall short of inclusivity in many critical ways. The knowns, we know about the challenges, the barriers of entrepreneurship. What we don't know are how those barriers are specific and how they affect women in particular ways. We have access to finance, which everybody talks about, access to markets, and access to women-centered entrepreneurial. Battery. Access to women-centered entrepreneurial education and skills training and networks. Okay, it's very important. And we have a particular one which is related to the care economy and then the confidence gap. Now, to start with, there is an underlying barrier that works to aggravate and perpetuate these other barriers. Africa is the continent where the culture of patriarchy has existed the longest and has hindered the female entrepreneurs the most. Cultural barriers, traditions, and stereotypes have contributed in making it more difficult for many African female entrepreneurs to find the fine-tuned balance between family and their profession. So creating an inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem would necessitate the abolition of those traditional practices, societal prejudices, and norms that have marginalized and largely excluded women. Furthermore, it would require the creation of good incentives that would attract and encourage women to take up careers in entrepreneurship as business people, as entrepreneurs. Now, I would like to take these barriers one by one, to kind of talk about what are specific. Finance. Quite a lot of talk has gone into the discourse on the lack of equal opportunity in access to business finance for female entrepreneurs. And I want to believe that much sincere efforts will be dedicated towards addressing the issue after today. Investment in African tech startups has seen a huge growth in recent years and continues to skyrocket. But there is very little known, okay? We know very little about the very low numbers of female fund managers, and in particular, African female fund managers, with whom the typical African female entrepreneur would feel most at home and comfortable to discuss capital requirements and pitch for funding. A recent study by Brighter Bridges and World Bank's Gender Innovation Lab found that between 2013 and 2021, African startups raised $1.7 billion in early stage financing. But the study also found that since 2013, only 3% of funding went to all female founding teams, as against 76% of funding that went to all male founders. So African female founders are underrepresented in sectors that attract most financing, such as financial services, fintech, technology, construction, and logistics. And this brings me to the confidence gap that separates female and male founders. Like I said before, women feel less confident in their ability to lead and in their entrepreneurial skills than their male counterparts. Female founders are less likely to pitch for equity funding. They are more comfortable pitching for grants and loans out of lack of self-confidence. So addressing this deficiency in access to venture capital would certainly go a long way in addressing the issue of self-confidence in the female entrepreneur. Gender gap is driven by investor bias. Encouraging more investors to adopt a genderless investment strategy represents one approach to bridging this huge gap. If we come to market access, in many aspects, Africa can still be considered a virgin land of incredible opportunities for the well-equipped entrepreneur. Traveling across Africa, I see cities to be developed, infrastructure to be designed and built, rural areas to be electrified, and several other development opportunities are abound. The new African Continental Free Trade Area offers a great opportunity for gender inclusion in market access and intra-Africa trade. Therefore, I would say that without doubt, if the society offers an inclusive and enabling environment, the African female entrepreneur would surely excel. The gains in this context would also be amplified where there is public, private, corporate, and systemic encouragement and effective actions for female procurement to boost the activity and market share of female entrepreneurs. I would simply call this buying from women. If we come to training and skills development, we all know about the lack of equal access to training opportunities, skill development, mentorship, and career advice for women. But not much is known about the educational and digital divide that renders it difficult for many women to leapfrog into the digital age of online commercial activities. Economic equity would entail that female entrepreneurs are incentivized to engage in various male-dominated sectors, such as engineering, construction, and mining, encouraging women to undertake such careers through the provision of specific and targeted education, training opportunities, and digital skills development would boost female participation in these sectors. We have noticed from our experience a big unknown, and which is something related to the care economy. This is one of the most impactful unknowns on female entrepreneurship, especially in Africa. It is the availability of spousal support for the female entrepreneur, or lack thereof. Lack of support from the spouse makes the female entrepreneur feel less self-confident, less capable and incompetent, and in many cases may also lead to family violence against women. Related to this is time constraints on women as family caregivers. Women and girls shoulder the biggest chunk of the responsibility for care in the family. And this is a situation that has been aggravated by the COVID-19 crisis during lockdowns, when the demand for child and family care increased significantly. So therefore, there is need to create necessary environment and support systems that make it easier for the female entrepreneur to find the right balance between her business and family. Creating support structures and sharing family work burden between men and women would help mitigate any sense of guilt feelings on the part of female entrepreneurs for the fear of failing in their traditional role of mothers, and therefore also enhance their self-confidence in their ability to successfully engage in extra family activities. Now, how are we as AWIF? How are we as an African entrepreneurship support organization? I would like to share my slide here.
So, okay.
I don't know if you're seeing this slide, please.
No, I am seeing the slides, Irene. I'm just wondering whether, in the interest of time, whether we'll have. I mean, it would be nice to bring the three of you together to actually have a conversation and a discussion around many of the issues that you raised. For example, all of the things that you said, I thought, my goodness, I could be listening to a conversation amongst women in the global north, in the UK, US, Europe, you know, the same kind of barriers as you've identified: female fund managers, lack of digital training, buying from women, the confidence gap, you know, market access, and I could go on. I just wonder, I mean, you and I know there is another lived reality across the African continent, and whether, you know, what are the big barriers for, you know, the spouse support was another. What are the big challenges for African women entrepreneurs across the African continent? Because I know from experience that, you know, market access, that the African continent, for example, is, I just wonder, be nowhere without women. And I know there is another lived reality across the African continent of culture, of society, and whether, you know, what are the, how is it that what are the big barriers? I don't know, harnessing that for, you know, the spouse. But no, I mean, if you want to, the big challenges for African women, but I think it would be lovely if the three of, you know, the four of us can come together. Because I know an experience that, you know, market access, that the African continent, for example, is, I just want to be nowhere without, and I know there's another reality across the African continent of culture, of society, and whether, you know, what are the, how is it that what are the big barriers? I don't know, harnessing that for the spouse. But no, I mean, if you want to, the big challenges of Africa.
Of course, we drive women as business leadership and entrepreneurship on the continent. Okay, so we develop and we implement specific, you know, fully women-centered programs. Our accelerator, incubation and entrepreneurship and capacity building to be more flexible and to work within women's time and resource constraints. Then we continue to advocate and work for effective gender-sensitive policy reforms and legislation to transform the African entrepreneurship ecosystem and effectively support women entrepreneurs to unlock their potentials. One of the things that we have noticed is the importance of a community, okay? Network for women. For women, this is a very helpful thing to address most of those challenges that we are talking about, confidence gap and peer learning. So we built recently with a digital platform, also trying to leverage technology for scale. David mentioned how do you scale, learning? So our community, the platform that we just launched, is a digital membership platform to connect women to themselves. And it's an opportunity for us to enhance and scale our impact. So this is a platform that offers them inspiring content, masterclasses, mentorship, and learning. Mentorship, we have identified, is something specific that must be used to support women. That one-on-one engagement and coaching, not just ordinary training, like David highlighted this issue too. So it's about visibility, it's about showcasing them, it's about supporting them in a community, introducing them to opportunities of finance, and then peer-to-peer learning. So then we have the AWIF Awards, by which we identify success stories and excellence and showcase those success stories as role models, because women need to see those role models. And of course, we host our annual AWIF conference, which we started in 2015. It's our largest women entrepreneurship conference on the continent. And through that, we bring the ecosystem together to discuss and dialogue and have exchange on African women entrepreneurship and women economic empowerment. So we must constantly keep in mind that female entrepreneurship support has been neglected and marginalized globally, and in particular in Africa. And combating and overcoming the negative effects of this long-standing marginalization requires dedicated ecosystem cooperation and collaboration, devoid of self-defeating antagonisms and useless competition between the entrepreneurs. And one of the most impactful unknowns on female entrepreneurship is the finally, to conclude, what are the growing sectors and opportunities in Africa, and how well are women and African women entrepreneurs equipped to leverage them? The growing sectors I could say include fintech, agri-tech, renewable and clean energy solutions, agriculture and agribusiness, e-commerce, logistics, mining and construction. Are women in Africa well equipped to leverage and reap benefit equally in these sectors? I would say no. And with this, Paminda, I conclude. Thank you.
I would like to invite all the speakers, David and Bagoré, to join us. I wonder if our tech wizards can enable that to happen, please, so we can actually have a collective conversation. Is that possible? Somebody can answer. If not, I'm going to start asking questions and directing questions to each of them, and see if that's how they will come through. Wow. Okay. So really, I guess, we've heard from David, the sad story of training, and the kind of the returns on investment on training. I'm blown away by the extraordinary number, the amount of investment in training of billions of dollars, with only 12% actually leading to profit. We've heard from Bagoré as an entrepreneur, and what you felt in him was the fire in his belly. And, and there is a difference between an entrepreneur training entrepreneurs as opposed to professionals training entrepreneurs, in my view. And I'd love, to hear particularly from Irene and Bagoré about those different training models. Is it that the model is wrong, that David is, has been evaluating, and that's one thing? And is it that the model is not fit for the emerging markets, or Africa, Asia, Latin America, the global South? And how can the global South effectively, and the funders are predominantly based in the global North, what can the Global South teach the Global North around entrepreneurship support organizations, entrepreneurship support services, which are going to be relevant to, but which are not going to be relevant to many of the realities of the global South. Let me throw that at Bagoré and then go to David and then come to Irene again.
So,
okay, so I have to go on to swap card now, do I? No.
No, you don't. The users are seeing us in Swapcard, but we're in Zoom and they can see all four of us. So it's fine. We're having a nice conversation. And so
cool. And
so over to you, Bagoré.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. So yes, as I tried to showcase in my pragmatic learnings in the case of my own business, but also, I recognize this 5 phases in every business I talk about with other entrepreneurs. Really, even with herders, my finally the herders of Laiterie Berger are entrepreneurs. Some of them, they say, oh, we should change the way we herd the cows. Maybe we should mix the cows, local cows, with more milk breeds to have more milk. Or maybe we used to move to the south to get the grass. Now we will stay in place. At each time, this first step is the rejection of the status quo and a vision of I can do it differently. And it won't be a success the first shot. You have to be persistent, etc. You have to focus on execution at one step. So for me, peer experience is key. When you have another entrepreneur talking to you and sharing with you his fears, or his conviction of what has made him succeed, it has another impact than a theoretic learning. Okay, so I think peer-to-peer, and this is about coaching. Maybe this is more soft now, as David was saying also, and Irene also. It is more soft. A woman who tries to make her own business on top of having her house, managed and kept, because it is mandatory for her to have that, or her husband is, or her whole family is expecting that from her, and we'll see the first minute when she won't be at time, So, but if this woman, she talks with another woman, and they exchange, how can we do it? And I succeeded in making it. This will have an impact, of course.
Yeah.
And what I can say also is networks of entrepreneurs. We talk about small entrepreneurs, but very important entrepreneurs. In YPO, for example, Young President Organization is the most, the biggest organization of entrepreneurs. They only allow you if you have something like $15 million revenue to get there. And the reason why they go there is because we get better when we are with other entrepreneurs, and we develop tools between us to get better. So really, I think I'm convinced peer-to-peer is key. But on top of that, of course, training. Sorry.
I have a lot more questions, so I don't need you to answer everything all at once. Okay, so hold on. Let me actually, David, let me come to you with the same question, which is that maybe you've got the training models wrong.
Well, I mean, I think this is, again, there should not be a single training model. And so, we have been there are a range of sort of programs that are teaching in different ways. And I talked about some of the sort of standard programs, and, the ILO has been one of the innovators in getting a standardized approach that teaches some basic skills, and then also in trying to add additional elements to that to address different audiences. I think, one of the we've already seen this come up in our discussions. One of the problems is that there's just such a heterogeneity of entrepreneurs. And so it's sort of nonsense to talk about a program for entrepreneurs. And Bagoré made this point, right? And so we have these different goals that we've talked about inclusive growth and poverty alleviation, where we want programs that are helping very small people. And if you can get somebody who's earning, $1 a day to get to $1.12 a day, that is still fantastic. That's a huge improvement in their livelihood, even if it's not going to be creating more jobs for other people. And we need that type of program. But we also want programs for the Bagorés who are.
But David, I just wonder whether this word entrepreneur, not everybody is an entrepreneur. I mean, I spent 25 years being a film producer, and now I'm a creative entrepreneur. I never called myself an entrepreneur. So I'm just wondering whether, the woman who wants to produce, ground spices, like there are traders, there are dynamics, there are necessity. There's a kind of this one term. Is it that we can't put all of those people under this one basket and call them everybody an entrepreneur? In that case, you're an entrepreneur too.
Yeah, I'm far from an entrepreneur, that's for sure. But
an entrepreneur.
It's I think being realistic in terms of what we can expect from these types of programs, and we ask a lot more of this than we ask, for example, of classroom education. We put people in for a whole year of school, and we get maybe a 10% increase in their income, and that's sort of what the return to a whole year of schooling is. And then we take people and put them in 2 weeks of training, and we expect it to do all these wonderful things. And so part of it is that we need sustained and intensive approaches for the most to really accelerate the most successful types of businesses. But we also need quite light touch, low cost approaches where we can just help people do a little bit of things better. And so I think we need that sort of a menu of services. And so rather than saying, have we got the wrong things, I think maybe you should ask are the most popular dishes on the menu not the ones that we should be focusing as much of our attention on? But I think we want this whole menu of approaches.
I mean, I fundamentally believe, and I want to come to Irene, that entrepreneurship is teachable and learnable. I believe that the only thing that the training gives you, unless if you do not have a vision, if you do not have the fire in your belly in the way that the Bagoré clearly demonstrates to us, no amount of training is going to help you. But if there is a purpose to which you're going to apply that training, then I think you can see evidence of the impact of that training. And I guess, which leads me to ask also Irene about, you're providing a lot of services through your organization, AWIEF. But how are these services supported financially? Are you completely subsidized, or does your organization contribute partially to those services? Irene?
No, thank you, Linda. The services that we provide as an entrepreneurship support organization, currently so far, they are mainly donor funded. Okay, many a time the women entrepreneurs are always the finance constrained, and so there is currently they're not contributing. So we are, basing our financial model is mainly.
What do you say when I want to be a devil's advocate and say entrepreneurs, you have to have a skin in the game, just as you have a skin in the game in your business. Similarly, you have to have a skin in the game in your own development, whether it's personal initiative training or whether it's business development training, whether it's coaching on mentoring. And I'd also like Bagoré to come in on this, and also from his experience of the types of business services that entrepreneurs are ready to pay for. I mean, so how do you, Irene, wean women entrepreneurs from 100% subsidized programs in which they do not have a skin in the game to actually saying this is a collaboration, and your own sustainability, your own organizations is also dependent on that.
Yeah. Is this for me or for Bagoré?
Both of you, but you take it first.
Yeah. We are, what you said, Paminda, is very correct. Okay, and that is one of the reasons why we launched the community, because we want to also teach women that if you want to drive a business, there is what David mentioned, what you mentioned. Once you have the passion and the vision, you must also invest in that. So the community certainly moving that forward. It's a membership-based community, and they have to contribute to have a fit in the game, like you said. Okay, so it's important, and we have identified also the kind of support that women are ready to pay for, and it's not just the ordinary training. Women are ready to pay for one-on-one engagement, mentoring, and coaching. And this is where you get more impact, from them. Women are also ready to pay to be able to network, with other entrepreneurs. So opportunities like that, and of course, they will pay for opportunities of accessing finance, because finance is not free. Okay, so that gets supported also with technical support and training. So
Okay.
yes, some of them are ready for certain kinds of business support.
So they are ready to pay for some of the support, I guess, some of the soft skills. But from your experience, what types of business services are entrepreneurs ready to pay for, and why? You can speak about Senegal, or you can speak about the African continent.
Yeah, thank you. So I fully agree with Irene. I think also, entrepreneurs, it is a big range of possibilities. When we talk about, for example, let's take the case of this woman who is a milk supplier, okay, for my business, for example. She earns something like 150 per month. And half part of that is to feed the cows, so $65 to feed the cows. So she has $65 free cash flow, let's say, as a financialist. So if you ask her to pay for a coach or for whatever service, when she can't offer a good doctor for her sons when they are when they are sick, it is just no way, they can't pay the services in general. If you go for an entrepreneur like me, a company that is making, millions of dollars per year, if I can find a good coach who can, help me to take a good decision, I know it is key and it is impactful. I can pay him $10,000, and I do that. And all entrepreneurs, they do that. So for me, or network of entrepreneurs, there is a fee to get in this network, and it is working. They have they always have people coming to the networks. So I think we should. And there was a question about what is social entrepreneurship in this seminar. I think when it is business, a strong business, that is sustainable with its own economy, it has its own business model. And it knows what does it need to grow. When this is services, access to services, they can pay, so they can train their people, they can train themselves, the entrepreneurs and the leading teams, or even every employee of this company will be trained, okay, because they have a strong business model. But when it is very small entrepreneurs, people who make their own employment only, oftentimes they can't pay. So this service, this growing of the capacity of this kind of entrepreneur is our common interest, because we need more people who earn their life correctly, who have stable. I think. Oh, so sorry, Irene. Sorry, Parmandia, please.
No. I mean, I think what we're trying to do in the discussion element is to really continue to focus on scale and sustainability as two themes, and also obviously to be mindful of the three tracks where a lot of the discussions are going to be taking place. I mean, Bagoré, let me come to David quickly, and I'm sort of jumping about now with questions. Some of the questions that we really felt while we have you to extract the information from you. So David, you randomized, I don't know, controlled trials have highlighted, or your randomized controlled trials have highlighted the limited impact of some business trainings, as we've repeated. But did they tell you anything about, I guess, the financial sustainability of those businesses?
So again, I think there's two ways of making this training more sustainable, and so one is to lower the costs of offering it, and so if that same, if you can get it to scale and lower this cost of training it, and so rather than it costing $500 or $200 to train one of these small self-employed businesses, you can make that cost come down a lot more and still get sort of relatively similar improvements in profits, or that's one way of making it more sustainable. At the moment, this got to Bagoré's comment. If you take somebody who's earning $100 a month, you increase their profits by $10 a month, and it's $150 for training. In a year and a half, they've earned back the cost of that training. And so, somebody without a lot of money is not going to necessarily want to borrow from that, but from a social perspective, that still may be a useful, return on investment, even at those rates that we've been talking about. And if we can knock that cost of providing that training down, it becomes even more. But this gets to, can we charge people? How can we, make this more sustainable? And so what we've found is certainly the demand curve slopes downwards. The higher we make the price, the fewer entrepreneurs do it. In Jamaica, we, tried varying the price, and 90% of people wanted the training when it was free, 10% of them wanted it when it was the full price. And so we found the sort of sweet spot was charging people around maybe 25% of the cost of training, where they were putting some of their own skin in the game. There was still some subsidy, but people who had to pay for training attended training more. They sort of devoted more effort into it with their own skin in the game. So this gets at your point. But, they needed still some subsidy to make it work for these sort of poorer entrepreneurs. For these sort of up and coming entrepreneurs with, who are getting beyond that subsistence level, that self-employment level, and are having a few employees, one of the key things I think is making that marketplace work better. It's, as I'm sure Bagoré and Irene can tell you, there's just a lot of providers out there who are offering products, and it's really hard as an entrepreneur to know who's good at, is this training going to be a good training, or is it going to be a bad training? It's really hard for me to know in advance. And I think, we can do more in terms of improving that ecosystem for the, good quality training providers to establish reputations, to build brands, to, and the government and other policymakers can work as market makers here. And so one thing we found in Nigeria was an initial subsidy to, try out an HR provider or a professional accountant led you to go back to the market and start buying more of those services. You didn't trust them at first. You tried them out. You found, hey, these things can be quite useful, and you go back and spend some of your own money. And so that's another sort of approach is to sort of, kickstart that market. And it's a problem we face in sort of even in the most developed countries is there's just a lot of uncertainty about how good these programs are going to be until you try them out, until a trusted network partner tries them out, and you can hear for them. So the marketplace doesn't work as well as we'd like it to.
Thank you. Irene, can we come, in terms of scaling up the services that your organization or your approaches is providing? I'd like you to talk about how easy or what are the challenges of you scaling up AWIEF across the African continent?
Yeah. So
the services of your organization, yeah?
Yes. So before the COVID-19 crisis, it was more holding trainings with a group of women and all that. But with the crisis, we leapfrogged, we leveraged technology. So we have actually started scaling, and that is the way to go. It's not going to go back. We're not going back. So we are scaling, and we are using technology, and this the platform that we have built.
What does that mean that you are scaling? Scaling in what way and how?
Now we can run trainings with more women, not only in one location, like only in South Africa, only in Nigeria, only in Malawi, but by doing an online training, having the trainings virtually, using technology, we can reach now more women and across more African countries, and that is scaling. And we can design.
But that surely still is not inclusive. What happens to rural women, poor women? Yeah, I mean, the urban middle class African women you can reach, but what about all the large sections of women across the continent? How do you reach them with some of your services?
Because that is still an unknown. That is still a big challenge. How do you reach the women in the local communities, in the grassroots? But of course, you also know that the programs, the programs differ according to the level of women. Women in the rural communities, they are more smallholder farmers, essentially. So you have to design a specific kind of program for them. But that is a challenge that we cannot solve on our own as an entrepreneurship support organization, because we have the general African problem of connectivity, if you want to use a technology. In these communities, many of them lack electricity. There is no electrification. There is no internet connectivity. So it's still a challenge. It's still an unknown. And all of us as ecosystem, as entrepreneurship ecosystem, we still have to dive in to see how to address it. But for the time being, we can reach at a wider scale, reaching the women in the urban and semi-urban communities with technology. And then we design them how to reach women in the rural communities.
Thank you. Bagoré. And I know, I mean, the 80-20, they say 80% of businesses die, 20% survive. So the mortality rates of new business and the fact that micro businesses they often generate few and precious jobs. I guess, what's your response to that? I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're a veterinarian who's made it as an entrepreneur. You can afford to pay $10,000 for coaching that is not open to everybody. I mean, how do we build, if you and I both believe passionately that the entrepreneurs across the continent are the solution providers, are the engines that are going to drive the economic transformation of the continent, and yet the mortality rates are very, very high. How do we address that? And and I suppose it also applies to women as well. But Bagoré, where are you?
Okay. So I think it is normal to have mortality.
Normal.
Yeah, it's normal. We have to accept that. Including for the funding solutions. For all, we have to accept that some of the companies who will set up will die. And it is okay. So sometimes you fail and you learn something, either for you or for the community, and somebody else is going. In my case, I tell you, Nestle, for example, has been trying to make milk collection. They failed, but I used their learnings to try at my turn. So I think this has to be also, it is very important to say so, because a lot of entrepreneurs, they just don't start up because they fear the failure too much, especially in our countries, and especially women or colored people, or, people who have less confidence. They even more this fail stuff. So let's talk about it. Failure is okay. It's part of the game. And
that was going to be one of my questions. So please do talk about failure. Yeah.
This is part of the game. And so I think not everybody is an entrepreneur. And not everybody is a successful entrepreneur. If you look seriously, the 5 steps I've been talking about, many people, they say they are entrepreneurs, but they don't check the 5, you know? So they don't commit enough to go till the end of the journey. So, but if you know the entrepreneurs, the psychology and so on, and if you ask entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, to say who is an entrepreneur, they recognize themselves, you know, vision, the passion, you know, who has a real potential I talk about entrepreneurs who will set up a sustainable business, you know, a business that is established, that can make employment, not an informal business, you know, making only 1 or 2 or 3 jobs. This is also very important. Huh?
It's very important, yeah.
But you know, I think to make jobs, to make sustainable jobs, we need formal small enterprise, and this is run by real entrepreneurs. So I think the screening of who is a real entrepreneur, who is not, is key. You know, everybody is saying maybe this is an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. Okay. What do we call an entrepreneur? What is it? And if we find them, you will have some of them will succeed, some of them will fail, but anyway, you will have targeted the right ones. And there I think there are people who really who look for entrepreneurs. For example, investment funds. You know, they make their own money with people. So if they make a mistake, they waste their money with the entrepreneur. So they know how to, you know, they evaluate really the personality, etc., the general skills, you know, the potential of the people they go with. So I think we should help these funds to operate more and to downsize their tickets, because of their model, they prefer to go with businesses that making $10 million, because one business is you know, because, you know, you have for example, 10% benefit on $10 million is $1 million. It's good. If you make the same job with a company that is $100,000, the benefit is only $10,000. Okay, and if you go down, you don't have benefits. But it is still needed to grow small businesses. In Africa, we only have small businesses. So how can we help funds to provide their services, including financing and accompanying of entrepreneurs during this, you know, structuration period, you know, the first 5-7 years, okay? How can we help the funds to go and to make this job to small African entrepreneurs? Or how can we make the funds to target women entrepreneurs in Africa? Something like that, you know? So, I think fund is really a key player to transform potential entrepreneurs to successful entrepreneurs. And this will include failure. So these funds, we have to be sure we fund them with money that allows them to target these people in a sustainable way. You understand? So
I do. I mean, no, absolutely. You're giving a masterclass on entrepreneurship development. I guess, you know, we've got about 7 minutes apparently left before we have a coffee break. And after the coffee break, we hope that there will be a lot of questions that the participants have put up on the chat, and they will, those questions will be presented to you. So I guess maybe let me ask just one question that maybe all of you can answer around entrepreneurship support has also assumed there's a kind of key role in addressing environmental issues and contributing to a green economy transition. But, you know, the counter argument could be that, in fact, these are often promoting business as usual and in a way perpetuating the depletion of natural resources. I guess, you know, the question here it is, what is the role of entrepreneurship support organizations, you know, a successful business like yours, a successful organization like Irene's? What's your role in addressing the environmental issues? Let me go to Irene, and then I'll come back to you, Bagoré, and then I'll go to David. Even the World Bank has a role to play in the environmental savior. Irene.
Yes.
All three of you are going to save the environment now in your answers.
Well, I think our role in the environmental sustainability issue is that with every program we are designing and we are implementing, we ensure that we design in, things that guard against the environmental sustainability. And I must say anyway, that a lot of women entrepreneurs are actually naturally driven as social entrepreneurs. A lot of women go into social enterprise, as you must know, because it's a natural thing for women to nurture. And you find out that many women actually go into these areas of social enterprise. And what is social entrepreneurship? When you are running a business with, you want to make profit, but you also want to make impact on people and impact on the environment.
But don't you think, Irene, that, actually, yes, social entrepreneurs, we can add the social dimension to our entrepreneurship, but actually the real, where the real issue, this issue needs to be addressed by for-profit entrepreneurs, for big business, etc. So it's not just on the shoulders of social entrepreneurs to be environmentally sustainable.
No, absolutely not. It cannot be only on the shoulders of social entrepreneurs. We need the government, the corporate, sector to be involved, to design policies that protect against that, and to also support those of them who are social entrepreneurs, like women who design a clean tech, clean energy solutions. They are protecting the environment. We have in our network a lot of women who are, moving from agriculture into energy, utilizing waste, that they get from agriculture to generate energy. They are, working on environmental sustainability, and that is that we are seeing. So, but what is lacking is government support and corporate sector support. Government support in terms of supporting legislation and policies, and corporate support with funding, because at the end of the day, it all boils down to funding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Bagoré, do you want to add anything to saving the planet as an entrepreneur?
I think first of all, it is a big entrepreneurial opportunity. We know that everybody is looking for clean energy now. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs who make solar solutions to people who are off grid and so on. So it is a huge economic and business opportunity. So this is once again, it's changed. It is an opportunity for entrepreneurs. The rejection of the status quo. We have an energy that is not good for the planet.
I mean, you're aware of the Great Green Wall from Senegal all the way to, I mean, I see it as, yes, it's important for the environment, but also it's an extraordinary opportunity to engage and employ local entrepreneurs around the value chain of desertification, etc. I mean, it's an extraordinary undertaking,
Yeah, I fully agree. So, in my case, in Laiterie du Berger, we're a factory, so we need energy. So how can we use solar power to be more efficient? In fact, it is completely linked. And also we purchase milk from herders. Herders, they have a strong impact on climate, and in my region, on desertification. So we have to be, aware of that, and which system, which agro system do we promote to have a sustainable way of farming without repeating the same, issues that we have in the developing countries. And I wanted to say something about this green world or nature economy. Don't forget this woman I told about earlier. This case, she earns $150 a day. Her house is made from wood that she takes from the environment, and her water, the water she drinks, she takes it in a puits. I don't know how you say, in the environment. So when this environment is getting poorer, with less diversity, she is getting poorer because she has to purchase concrete to make her house, and she has to purchase and the gas and the butane, and to cook. So diversity of the nature these poor people live in is a real economy. Okay, I just want to remind this.
No, thank you. And your company is really, I mean, your company is doing its bit as a successful business, or it's taking its responsibility seriously, I suppose, is what you're saying around environmental sustainability. David, actually, rather than ask you about environmental sustainability, I think one of the kind of the elephant in the room, or the one thing that we haven't really emphasized a lot on, and the role is really the role of the government. So I guess, I'd love to throw this question at you, which is how can the entrepreneurs support organizations and this kind of ecosystem, how can they collaborate with governments to co-create and influence policies around entrepreneurship development?
Well, I see we have a message from Elisa saying we're over time.
Yeah. Okay, Lisa, I'm so sorry. But can we get an answer to that?
I was going to say that's a long question. I want to relate it to the, quickly just to this innovation and climate change thing, saying, there's always the question, why should we spend money at all on entrepreneurs when we could be spending it on education or on health programs or something else? And I think one reason is particularly that we need this innovation, we need this sort of solutions to some of these externalities that entrepreneurs are not going to incorporate in their own decisions necessarily, unless, a lot of entrepreneurs have this strong social bent, but that's not going to be enough. And so this is where we do need this collaboration with government. But I will, kick us, I don't want to take away from our break, and I will kick us off.
Elisa, thank you for the reminder. David, thank you. Bagoré and Irene, we're going to come back together again in 15 minutes time. So thank you very much. Okay, participants, I cannot stress enough the importance of you doing all the things that I mentioned right at the start, discussion forums, connecting with, participating in them, connecting with the attendees, making contact with the speakers, etc., joining those discussion forums, engaging with the speakers, connecting with each other, and sharing some of your comments and questions that we can throw, which are probably going to be much more focused questions to the three speakers who will join us again after coffee. With that, enjoy your coffee and look forward to welcoming you back for the final session of today. And I gather we've got the numbers of participants who are joining are increasing by the minute. Thank you very much.